Welcome to the BJ Show. Let's rock and roll. Rock and roll. Come on, everybody. Let's lose control. Brad and John, they're the ones to follow. Get ready for the ride. It's the BJ Show. BJ Show.
It is the BJ Show for the last day of March. Today is March 31st, 2025. This is the A block, which means we start around 7 o'clock. The reason I bring that up at the start of each segment, at least I try to, is that we do the show live, 7 to 8 o'clock Central Standard Time, every Monday through Friday. So if you're listening in the future, you know the references, the dates, and hopefully it'll make sense to you as what we're talking about. We bring this guy in right now. What's your name again, sir?
I'm Casey Kasem.
And why would we bring him in? Because of the fact that he counts down John Combest's top 3. Now, John, how many items are there in the John Combest list today?
I have more. Let's see. I think I got like 20 because there was no show posted for Friday's show. So I added those to Monday's list, Brad. So I guess there's probably about 24 today if we include Friday's show that I couldn't link to on Saturday.
That is what John Combest does every single day of his life for the past 23 years. He puts all this information at your fingertips, the stuff that you should know about all over the state of Missouri. Could be legislative, could be bureaucratic, could be Selena Gomez with a new song, or could be Valentina Gomez driving her Cybertruck at the Elon Musk protests. Could be all sorts of stuff. But what we do is we bring in that guy who we introduced before, and he counts them down like...
Now on with the countdown.
And we start with...
In third place...
Baby, turn around and let me see MoDOT remove those bumps. Brad, where are you at on bump outs?
John, you know, it's funny you should mention that because we need to talk about, it's not on MoDOT, but I think it's St. Louis County, but you're talking about the bump outs, meaning specifically what now? The things on the road when you went off the road, your tires go, is that what you're talking about?
No, and you're familiar with the bump out controversy on Clarkson Road, right, Brad?
That's what I was talking about. Well, they're talking about doing that up in North County as well, too. Did you know that?
I did hear that, yeah. So on Saturday, I had a couple links on my website, one from the St. Louis Post-Dispatch and one from KMOV, First Alert 4. There was a huge controversy in the fall, excuse me, because seemingly out of the blue, MoDOT began installing these curb-like things on Clarkson Road in St. Louis County. Specifically, for folks who are from St. Louis, you'll probably know the stretch on Clarkson Road, south of Highway 40, before you get to about, we'll call it Clayton Road. A number of curb-like edifices were built on what used to be the shoulder. So in other words, you couldn't drive on the shoulder area if you were trying to bust a right into a strip mall and you wanted to start the turn a little bit early, or if you were just driving down Clarkson Road, driving south on Clarkson Road, they would show up in the shoulder of the road. And they were roughly, what would you say, Brad? You've seen them 6 inches tall, maybe?
Oh, yeah. They're like curbs. They're like, 20, 30 feet long. Is that high?
Yeah. So, and the idea is they're called, MoDOT refers to them as traffic calming mechanisms, essentially. And they discourage people from driving on the shoulder, I think, is one of the main functions. And then MoDOT says also that one of the ideas is to make the road appear more narrow, I guess. It's considered a traffic calming device. Now, at the very beginning of this controversy in West St. Louis County, a state representative from Chesterfield named Ben Keathley has been at the forefront of this from the very beginning. And he began by contacting MoDOT, writing to MoDOT, essentially, to put it bluntly, making a stink about this and saying, why didn't MoDOT do this? And further fuel was added to the fire when it was revealed that apparently Chesterfield officials were not notified of this before the bump outs went out. If I'm reading the stories correctly, Chesterfield was not asked for their input on this before MoDOT performed these measures. I bring this up, Brad, because MoDOT announced last week that they are changing course. Now they're going to come in, thanks to the leadership, by the way, of Ben Keathley, state representative from Chesterfield. Thanks to the leadership of Ben Keathley, MoDOT says, mea culpa. And in fact, a gentleman from MoDOT appeared on television on Friday. His name is Tom Blair. and he's the St. Louis district engineer. And he came out on camera to his credit and says, in short, we messed up. We're going to go out and we're going to remove those bump outs. No more bump outs in West County. To your point, Brad, what I don't have an answer to is, will the bump outs either be installed in North County, or if they're already installed, will they be taken out? I don't know. Do you know, Brad?
No, I haven't been up on New Halls Ferry for a while, but I saw that. Now, here, for those of you who haven't driven Clarkson, the first time I saw this, I thought to myself, what the hell is that? And what they are is, it's like an island, like sort of like a curb island. It's what, a couple feet wide? Wouldn't you say like 2 feet wide?
Yeah, probably 2 or 3 feet wide, sure.
And like 20, 30 feet long, and it's not right on the shoulder. What's like a couple feet off the shoulder? I mean,
I'd say 2 or 3 feet off the shoulder, sure.
I mean, a couple feet off the white line which delineates the right traffic line. Okay. Now, first off, the initial thing was, okay, isn't that going to screw up the MoDOT guys when they're clearing snow? Because, they clear snow into the shoulder, and then they come back after they get the lanes cleaned. They come back and they clean the shoulder off. Secondly, what if your car breaks down? And probably third, most importantly, let's say there's an accident on Clarkson or something like that, and traffic is at a standstill. Normally, what do you see? The emergency equipment, where do they drive, John?
They drive on the shoulder, which used to be open. And not to interrupt, Brad, but that was, I think, Ben Keathley and other folks who've led the charge on this. Their point was, what do you do for emergency responders? What do you do for those vehicles?
Right. If the traffic's jammed up, they drive on the shoulder. Well, they can't anymore now I saw the article. I think it was in the Post-Dispatch or something like 2 weeks ago, saying they're going to do the new thing on New Halls Ferry. But you said the guy didn't address that.
Yeah, I don't think it was addressed in the KMOV video. I would have it up, but as you know, Brad, when you open a KMOV or KSDK or Fox 2 story, you have 14 video pop-ups that play quite loudly. We get to experience that oftentimes when you open it up on the show. So what I thought when I first saw them going in the fall was I thought that they might put a couple, pliable barriers up, because when Clarkson Road gets quite congested, and a lot of times you'll have people wanting to turn into, for example, a strip mall a little bit early. So instead of waiting until the right turn lane begins, they might drive on the shoulder a little bit. And I thought, wow, that's super annoying that they're doing construction right now. But it turns out they were full-fledged bump outs. Now, what Ben Keathley addresses on Channel 4 is, Ben's point is, look, hopefully MoDOT is going to pick up the entire cost of removing these. Hopefully they're not going to try to stick the city for it. And Ben Keathley has a bill, House Bill 665, which would, in essence, ensure that cities and local municipalities are contacted and get their input put in before MoDOT takes one of these steps. They also had a gentleman on Channel 4 who said, well, that might not be a great idea, because if you have to get approval from every municipality for every project, then you could have municipalities vetoing major road projects. I'm sure Keathley has an answer to that. I'm sure his legislation, he could put something in there that says with the exception of X, Y, Z. But this appears to be, as for now, with MoDOT saying that they're going to be removing these bumps, it appears to be a case of a state representative taking an extremely local issue and actually getting some action from a state agency.
But don't you think that even if they don't get the Muni's approval, at least the Muni should know about it? I mean,
yeah. And from what I understand, again, Chesterfield, if I recall correctly, and my memory's not perfect here, Brad, but if I recall correctly, Chesterfield officials were surprised that these were going in, and they said that they didn't have at least any kind of significant heads up about it.
It's one of those things where you look at that and you think, okay, instead of doing that on Clarkson Road, why don't they patch the potholes on, I drive certain...
It's brutal, yeah. Some of these roads are brutal.
I drive certain roads on a daily basis. And for example, if you go west on 40, that right lane, right before you get to Clarkson, I don't know if you ever drive that like in St. Charles County, there's a huge pothole there all the time. You'd think like, okay, can't you get out there and cut out that section of the highway and, relay it in concrete or something like that? No, we have to put See, when I first heard this term, traffic calming, I mean, Des Moines, you know.
Yeah, it seems like everybody should be given a Valium before you get on the entrance ramp.
Right. It's like, we got to calm traffic down. We got to lay back. We've got to listen to KZK in the old days when it was beautiful music, when it was elevator music. We have to.
Hey, I heard about the demise of KEZK. I finished J.C. Corcoran's book late last night, Brad. So I feel like I'm a bit of an expert on all things KEZK.
Are you really still reading that?
No, I just said I finished it last night.
But do you like that book?
It's incredible. I have a renewed love for radio, Brad, since I bought that book and read it. It's amazing. I was leaning toward J.C. Corcoran. I was always a little bit biased toward him. And then I read the book, and I find it so sad that he has left radio. I went to his Facebook page, and I saw, like, I'm sure you saw this earlier in March, he posted why he's leaving the radio industry. And he talked about some of the, incompetent, bumbling fools that he's worked with over the last decade. I loved the book. I thought it was so good.
Okay. The flip side of that is, and not necessarily me because I've never really worked directly with him, but ask anybody who's worked with JC, and they will tell you why they're glad he's not in the radio business anymore. That's just all I'm going to say. Now, you know what the next sound is going to be heard? It's not going to be Casey Kasem giving you number 2. It's going to be, through the internet, a fist crushing my face from J.C. Corcoran. Right?
It was great. I generally don't talk about personal things, Brad, but over the weekend, my kids saw me reading the book, and they asked about it, and I said, this is a guy that that asked my friend Brad if Brad had ever heard the sound of a fist hitting his face. Right. And I was like, I didn't really side with this guy who wrote the book until I read his book, and I realized that, well, JC's probably right about that.
Yeah, I do need my face crushed. Thanks, John. Okay, here's number 2.
Up a notch to number 2.
Follow up to a story that we've talked about. I think this is the 4th time we've talked about it in the last 2 months. Franklin County toxic landfill. If you recall, there's a landfill in Franklin County. There's a gentleman that noticed that a bunch of disgusting ooze was seeking onto his property. Turns out there was a landfill right next to him. He dug a little deeper. Turns out Franklin County has known that this landfill is nothing nice for decades now. And in fact, they tried to go after the gentleman who owned it a long time. A familiar name to Brad and me, a guy named Zyken, who owned it for a long time. It was so dirty and so polluted that Mr. Zyken fled to Belize. He didn't want to be held accountable for that dump. So fast forward to last week, the Franklin County Commission got together, and these landowners wanted a little bit of insight. What was the county commission going to do? Brad, take a wild guess at what the county commission's going to do.
They're going to charter a flight to Belize to bring Mr. Zyken back?
That's exactly what they're doing. They're going to hire the A-team, and they're going to get Mr. Zyken to come back. They're going to ask him how he feels about Republic Services and their dominance of the local industry. And then they're going to do what they decided on Thursday, which is to shrug their shoulders and say, I don't know. So to hear it from the Franklin County Commission, there's really nothing they can do because there's no viable property owner. And Brad, as we talked about before, there's a woman who has an extensive amount of experience, according to her, in buying properties. Her last name is Archer. And she says that she put a bid in to buy the property and at the 2024 Franklin County delinquent tax sale. So she put a successful bid in, and then she did a little research and was like, whoa, dude, this is a toxic landfill. I'm not buying this. So where we stand today, the county commission says, hey, we've been in contact with the Missouri Department of Natural Resources, and we don't know what's going to happen. Another county commissioner says, well, quote, at the federal level, Ann Wagner is our representative, and we can also talk to her, but maybe she can do something. That's a verbatim quote from this gentleman, Commissioner Cox, 2nd District Commissioner Ken Cox. Now, in my opinion, star of this story is Senator Josh Hawley's office. I shouldn't say Hawley because he's not there, but he has a woman that works in his office named Madeleine Castle. Now, the reporter doesn't do her the courtesy of saying her title, which is St. Louis District Director, but Miss Castle attended the meeting on Thursday, so she's been a part of this stuff. And the piece does note that someone from Hawley's office actually toured the property months ago. We acknowledge that months ago, and I'm guessing it was Miss Castle toured the property. So Hawley is aware of this, and with all the work that he's been doing on the RECA stuff for everything going on in Coldwater Creek and Weldon Springs, you could see that he might have a hand in maybe at least pointing these people to the right direction. Now, this wouldn't be a federal issue, it appears, because it's not like the federal government created this mess, but it appears as though Hawley is at least having his people there looking into what can be done.
Complicated things. Government moves at a snail's pace. Okay, we're ready for number one?
We sure are.
The number one.
One of your favorite topics, no, two of your favorite topics are the top headline on my website today. The good folks down at KZRG, Zimmer Radio Group, down in Joplin, had Congressman Eric Burlison on. Congressman Burlison is a big tax cutter. He's a big Doge guy. In fact, he's on the Doge committee. He's a real good, hardline fiscal conservative. And he talked about, federal judges trying to block Trump. He talked about the Doge committee. But he brought up a fascinating point that brings in two of your favorite topics. We talked a lot last week about the F-47 coming to St. Louis, generally renowned as good news for Missouri. Congressman Burlison had a unique contrarian view, which is, yes, this is good for St. Louis. Yes, it's great for Missouri that F-47 is built here. But why, oh why, aren't we doing more to invest in drones? Brad, do you have an opinion on asymmetrical warfare and using drones to fight wars?
I've told you before. I think, for the price of one F-47, the price is yet to be determined. You could have, 2,000, 100,000 drones?
A whole lot.
What you do is, it's the concept of overwhelming the enemy. Like for example, if you were going to, let's say your next door neighbor was giving you trouble, and and you just couldn't get anywhere and you tried to work things out. If you filed 20 lawsuits against your next door neighbor, then things would get done. Because, oh my God, how am I going to defend my? It's strength in numbers. And the whole crazy thing about this is you see this more and more. We've got in Israel, they've got the Iron Dome thing. What do the Hamas people do? They don't shoot one rocket, they shoot multiple rockets at the same time. And what's a drone cost? Literally, there are guys, if you watch some of these videos on YouTube, showing how you can buy an off-the-shelf DJI drone for, $1,000, $1,500. Put a little like a cargo hanger on the bottom of them that you can remotely control. Put a hand grenade on that. And if you watch some of these, no, seriously, if you watch some of these videos from Ukraine, that's exactly what the Ukrainians have done. They've taken.
Yeah, and sorry to interrupt, but Burlison's point, I think, and I'll interrupt because I think this is exactly what the congressman was getting at. What he mentioned that I hadn't even thought of was the idea of there's so many constrictions that you have on traditional aircraft. You're an expert on this stuff, Brad. Like G-forces that would rip somebody's head off in a plane are no factor when it comes to drones. And all the other things that you've talked about, Brad, about the effectiveness of drones, Burlison's point, at least as I read it, is, and Burlison specifically calls out the fact that, yeah, this project has been going on for many, many years. I don't know if it's fair to say decades, but a long time it's been going on. And Burlison's like, that's great. This project was in the works, but now it's time to start thinking about how we can use unmanned vehicles. And Burlison says, when a drone goes down, you don't have a funeral.
Well, and that's exactly right. But not only that, the F-47 has been trumpeted by the fact it's going to use tremendous amount of AI, where it's going to use target acquisition that the pilot wouldn't normally see, multiple target acquisition at the same time. And it's to the point where first time I saw these videos, I thought to myself, okay, why do we need a pilot anymore?
It's just that good.
Right. Just let the plane fly. They already have the matter of fact, if you know the much ballyhooed thing last week or the week before where they did the Houthi rebels and the deal with the journalist Goldberg's on the feed on Signal. The interesting part of that is when they talked about the attack also included a bunch of I think the model numbers MQ-9, the Reaper drones, which are totally remote controlled. I mean, they're controlled by some guy sitting in a bomb shelter in New Mexico. I tell you what, I'm a big defense guy, but there comes a point in time, John's going to make fun of me because I'm going to throw my Eve always makes fun of the fact that I bring up the P-51 Mustang story, and I won't go there, John, because you make fun of me every time I bring up the P-51 Mustang story.
Well, and the 722, so we won't go there.
Right.